Sydney, my younger sister, was born when I was 6 years old. My name is Erica. The day my parents brought her home from the hospital is still fresh in my mind. Wrapped in a pink blanket, she was so little. Erica, my mother observed, you've grown into a big sister. You must assist us in caring for Sydney. I remembered those phrases all through my early years. In a quiet area where everyone knew one another, we lived in a modest but comfortable home. Both of my parents had regular careers. Mom was a secretary and Dad was an accountant. I always felt we had plenty, even if we weren't wealthy. Until I realized that Sydney and I were not the same anyway. It became evident as we grew older that my parents' treatment of us differed. I smashed a plate while doing the dishes when Sydney was 5 and I was 11. My penalty? A week without TV and more duties. Sydney ran around the house the next day and knocked over Mom's favorite vase. Mom swept up the shattered pieces and remarked, "She's just a little girl. She doesn't know any better." Things like these occurred frequently. Sydney received money simply because, while I had to do tasks to get my allowance, I had to wait for special occasions if I wanted new clothes. However, Sydney would immediately purchase a frock if she pointed at it in a store. It seemed like there was an unending list of things to do every day. I took Sydney to her primary school before going to mine, got up early to assist her get ready for school, and hurried back to pick her up after my classes. I kept her engaged, made sure she had snacks, and assisted her with her homework. Then everything changed on a Friday in October. It began like every other morning. I prepared Sydney's lunch, got up early, and left for school. That day I had a math test, but my thoughts kept straying. I had been fantasizing about having a summer camp flyer in my backpack. In order to attend a unique art camp, I had been saving my allowance and taking on extra work throughout the year. I even received a little scholarship for my paintings. It would only take me 7 more weeks to get there. My mom texted me when I was eating lunch. "Remember to grab your sister at 2:30. Like I could forget. For years I had been taking her up. I hurried as quickly as I could to Sydney's school, even though my arithmetic test was delayed. It was 2:45 when I arrived. There was nobody in the schoolyard. My heart began to race. I inspected the restrooms, the playground, and every classroom. She was nowhere to be seen. "Sydney, have you seen my sister?" As the janitor swept the corridor, I inquired. "The one with the blue backpack. She left with some friends right after the bell." I called her phone as my hands trembled. Directly to voicemail. I kept calling. Nothing. Maybe she went to Jenna's house, I thought, remembering her best friend. I ran 7 blocks, my backpack bouncing on my back. Jenna's mom opened the door. "Sorry, honey, I haven't seen her today." For the next 7 hours, I searched everywhere. The mall where she liked to window shop, the ice cream parlor she always begged me to take her to, the park where she hung out with her friends. My phone battery was dying. My feet were covered in blisters, but I couldn't stop. What if something bad had happened? At 9:10 p.m., I dragged myself home, ready to face my parents' worry and their anger. But when I walked in, there she was, sitting at the kitchen table, calmly eating pizza with Mom and Dad. "Where have you been?" Mom yelled, her face red with anger. "We've been worried sick." I stood there, too shocked to speak. "I've been looking for her everywhere. She wasn't at school, and her phone was off." Before I could say more, Sydney spoke first, her eyes filled with tears. "That's not true. I waited for hours after school, but Erica never came. My phone died, and I didn't know what to do. I went to my friend's house to call, but no one answered. Then I got lost trying to find my way home." I couldn't believe it. She was lying. I started to speak, but Dad cut me off. "We don't want to hear your excuses, Erica. Your sister could have been hurt. She ended up on the other side of town because of your carelessness." But I was there. The janitor saw her leave with her friend right after school. "Enough." Mom slammed her hand on the table. "Go to your room and give me your phone. and forget about summer camp. What? No, I've been saving all year. I even got a scholarship. You should have thought about that before abandoning your sister. Maybe this will teach you responsibility. I looked at Sydney. She was hiding a smirk behind her slice of pizza. And in that moment, something inside me broke. All those years of reading her bedtime stories, buying her treats with my allowance, helping her with homework, it didn't matter. She wasn't my sister. She was just someone who happened to live in the same house. That night, I packed away all the board games we used to play together. I took down the drawings she made for me. I threw out the half-eaten bag of her favorite candy I kept in my desk. From now on, Sydney was just another person who lived in our house, nothing more. Through middle school and high school, I focused only on my studies. My parents always talked about a college fund. At every family gathering, they proudly told relatives how they had been saving since we were born so both of us could get a good education. Once, I overheard Mom on the phone mentioning the amount. It was enough to cover 4 years at a state university for each of us. In my junior year, I spent countless nights working on scholarship applications. My SAT scores were nearly perfect, my grades were all A's, and my teachers wrote glowing recommendations. When the acceptance letters arrived, I could hardly believe it. I had received a full scholarship to my top choice university. One evening, I decided to tell my parents the news. "Mom, Dad, I have some good news," I said, holding the scholarship letter. I got a full ride to college, tuition, room, and board. Everything is covered. Mom looked up from her phone. "That's nice, honey." My heart pounded with hope. Since you won't need to spend the college money you saved for me, maybe I could use it for something else. I've been looking into it, and it would be enough for a down payment on a small apartment, or maybe even to start a business after graduation. The room went silent. Dad muted the TV. Mom's voice was sharp. "What college money?" I frowned. "The money you've been saving for our education." Dad cleared his throat. "Erica, that's our money. We saved it. We decide how to spend it." I felt my stomach drop. "But you always said it was for college education," I protested. "Since I got a scholarship, we should use that money for something else." Mom cut me off. "College is getting more expensive every year. Your sister might need extra help." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So because I worked hard and got a scholarship, I don't get anything. How is that fair?" "Life isn't fair," Dad snapped, "and it's not your money to claim." End of discussion. I stormed up to my room, my eyes burning with angry tears. The next few weeks were unbearable. My parents acted like nothing had happened. They talked about graduation and dorm shopping as if they hadn't just crushed my hopes. Whenever I tried to bring up the subject again, they either walked away or changed the topic. As I packed my bags for college that summer, I realized something. I was actually lucky. Lucky that I had worked so hard for that scholarship. Lucky that I hadn't counted on them for my education, because now I knew the truth. In this family, I could only count on myself. The day I left for college, I quietly loaded my 2 suitcases into an Uber while my family slept upstairs. No tearful goodbyes, no family photos on the front porch, no care package of homemade cookies, just the quiet click of the front door closing behind me. My first week on campus, I got a job at the university coffee shop. The hours were brutal. 6 a.m. openings before class, weekend shifts while other students went out partying. But it meant I could buy my own textbooks and never have to worry about running out of toothpaste. The only contact I had with my family was short voice messages on birthdays and holidays. "Happy birthday, Mom. Hope you have a great day. Merry Christmas, everyone. Stay warm." They rarely replied, and when they did, it was just as short. "Thanks, sweetie. Take care." One night, when I couldn't sleep, I found myself scrolling through Mom's Facebook page. There they were, dozens of family photos I had never seen before. Sydney, now 15, on stage at her dance recital, dressed in sparkly costumes. Her fancy birthday party, complete with a DJ and professional decorations. Family dinners with aunts, uncles, and cousins, where she was clearly the center of attention. Photos of her winning a school talent show, hanging out with her friends at the mall, smiling on her first day of 9th grade. But there was nothing about me. No mention that I was about to graduate summa cum laude from a top university. No photos of my empty chair at holiday gatherings. It was as if I had been erased from the family. After graduation, my friend Andrea had an idea. Let's rent an apartment together in Fresno. The tech scene is booming there. We could both get good jobs. Going back to South Dakota hadn't even crossed my mind. I got a job at a medium-sized marketing company, starting in an entry-level position. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough to cover my half of the rent in our small 3-bedroom apartment. I worked hard, staying late, learning new skills, and volunteering for tough projects. Soon I was earning enough to afford my own place, a tiny studio apartment, but it was mine, every inch of it paid for by my own hard work. After 4 years, I realized I had reached a limit. No matter how hard I worked, the company structure meant I would have to wait years for a real promotion. One evening, while updating my LinkedIn profile, I got a message from a recruiter at Tech Dynamics, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in Fresno. "Your profile caught my attention," she wrote. "Would you be interested in discussing an opportunity with us?" The interview process was tough. 5 rounds of meetings, a presentation, and a strategy proposal. But at 28, I was ready for the challenge. When the offer came, I could hardly believe it. My new salary was nearly double what I was making, plus stock options and bonuses that made my head spin. My career took off. Within 3 years, I was leading my own team. My smart investments paid off, and soon I walked into a Mercedes dealership and signed papers for a car I had only dreamed of in college. A few months later, I was approved for a mortgage on a beautiful 3-bedroom apartment in one of Fresno's best neighborhoods. Life was good, peaceful. Until my phone rang one November evening. Erica, my mother's voice, sounded different, almost hesitant. "How are you?" I almost dropped my wine glass. We hadn't talked beyond short holiday messages in years. "I'm fine," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Is everything okay?" Yes, we haven't seen you in so long. Would you come home for Christmas this year?" 4 weeks later, I pulled up to my parents' house in my new Mercedes. Inside, I saw that some things hadn't changed. Sydney, now 25 and a fresh college graduate, was still living at home. She sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, while Mom fussed over the dinner table and Dad pretended to be busy with his newspaper. "Erica," Mom hugged me awkwardly. "We've missed you so much." Dad nodded from behind his paper. "You look well." Dinner was awkward, forced politeness, small talk, and long silences. Sydney barely spoke, but I noticed her watching me throughout the meal. Finally, she broke the silence. "You've gained weight," she said with that same old smirk. "I guess making all that money means you can eat whatever you want now." I looked at her, then at my plate of Mom's Christmas roast, and smiled. Actually, I just have a peaceful life now. It's amazing how good life can be when no one is around to bother you. The silence that followed was sweeter than any Christmas dessert. After dinner, Mom asked me to stay behind while Dad and Sydney cleared the table. She led me to the old living room sofa, the same one where they once told me my college fund wasn't really mine. "Erica, honey," she began, her voice soft, like when I was a child and she wanted something. "I need to talk to you about something important." She looked older than I remembered. Tired, her hands nervously played with the edge of her sweater. "Your father retired last spring," she said. "His health isn't great anymore, and his medication costs are, well, they're more than we expected. I had to cut back to part-time at work to take care of him. I sat quietly, waiting for her to continue. "The house needs work, too," she added, pointing at the water stains on the ceiling. "The roof leaks, the furnace is old, and we can barely afford basic repairs. We're struggling, Erica." Then came the words I knew were coming. "We've seen how well you're doing. That beautiful car outside, your success. We're so proud of you. We were wondering if maybe you could help us out a little." I looked around at the house where I had grown up, the fading wallpaper, the worn carpet. Despite everything, I couldn't stand the thought of my parents struggling. "I'll send you $2,000 a month," I heard myself say. Mom's eyes lit up. She threw her arms around me, hugging me for the second time that night. "Oh, Erica, thank you, sweetheart. This means so much to us." True to my word, I set up the monthly transfers as soon as I got back to Fresno. Like clockwork, $2,000 went to my parents' account every month. I told myself it was for Dad's medical bills and house repairs. I didn't ask for receipts or proof. I was too busy with work to worry about how they spent it. But every now and then, when I had a rare free moment, I would check Sydney's Facebook page. There she was at a fancy new fusion restaurant, posting pictures of expensive sushi platters. Another post showed shopping bags from designer boutiques. She posed in new outfits in every photo, expensive ones, judging by the brand names. All this while still living at home with our struggling parents. Maybe she got a job? I wondered about it, but her posts didn't make sense. Lunch at fancy cafes on Sunday afternoons, shopping sprees on Saturday mornings, spa days on Thursdays. If she had a job, when did she work? But I was too busy with my own life to think about it too much. My team was growing, we had big projects launching, and I was up for another promotion. Then the call came, right in the middle of an important meeting. Mom never called during work hours. Our only contact for the past year had been through the monthly bank transfer notifications. I stepped out of the conference room. "Erica, we need your help," Mom said immediately, skipping any greetings. Her voice sounded urgent, more serious than I had heard since I was a child. "We need $100,000. It's an emergency." "Mom, wait." But she had already hung up. I stared at my phone, confused and afraid. My first thought was Dad. His health had been getting worse. That's why I had been sending money home every month. Was he in the hospital? Did he need emergency surgery? I remembered how weak he had looked at Christmas. The medical system was expensive. One bad illness could ruin a family financially. I rushed back into the meeting room, grabbed my things. "I'm sorry, everyone, I have a family emergency." I handed things over to my teammate Morgan, canceled all my meetings for the week, and booked the first flight to South Dakota. The entire trip, my mind raced with worst-case scenarios: Dad in the ICU, life-saving procedures they couldn't afford, impossible choices they had to make. I had read the headlines about families going bankrupt because of medical bills. Was this happening to my family? I rented a car and followed the GPS to my parents' house, 30 minutes away. Then I noticed something strange. All the lights in the house were on. I could see it from the end of the street. That wasn't what I expected in a medical emergency. Usually, in a crisis, people forget to turn on lights. I barely had time to knock before Mom opened the door. Her face fell when she saw me, like I was a salesperson at the door, not her daughter who had just flown across the country for an emergency. "Erica, what are you doing here?" Behind her, I saw Dad sitting in his chair, looking completely fine, reading a magazine. Sydney was in the living room, pacing back and forth, typing furiously on her phone. "You didn't have to come," Mom said, hesitating before letting me in. "We just needed you to send the money." The house smelled like coffee and pastries, not the air of a family in crisis. I looked around, confused. Then my eyes landed on the bridal magazines scattered across the coffee table. What's really going on? At first, I didn't notice. "Dad, are you okay?" I asked. "He's fine," Mom said quickly, throwing Sydney a warning look. "Everyone's fine. You really didn't need to come all this way." That's when Sydney stepped forward, practically bouncing with excitement. She held out her left hand, and a massive diamond ring sparkled in the light. It had to be at least 2 carats, way more than her fiancé could afford on his entry-level salary. "I'm getting married," she squealed, "and we need the money for the wedding. $100,000 should cover the basics." I stood there completely stunned, my carry-on bag still in my hand. The emergency that made me cancel work, book a last-minute flight, and worry myself sick was a wedding. "Well, we need to book the venue soon," Mom said, as if this made perfect sense. She sat on the couch, smoothing her skirt like we were just discussing weekend plans. $100,000 isn't much for a wedding these days. It's really quite modest when you think about it. Sydney nodded, still admiring her ring. "I actually wanted a $200,000 wedding," she said. "But I thought about you, sis. I cut everything in half to make it easier for you. You should be thanking me, really. I mean, $100,000 isn't a lot for you anymore." I looked at my sister's smug face, at my mother's expectant expression, and something inside me finally snapped. "No," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I won't give you a penny for this wedding." The silence was deafening. "What?" Sydney whispered, her face shifting from shock to rage. "You heard me. I won't pay for a wedding for someone who has made my life miserable since we were kids. Someone who lied about me, stole from me, and got me punished for things I didn't do. Someone whose tricks cost me my summer camp, my phone privileges, and so much more." I turned to my parents. "And you always took her side. You always believed her lies over my truth. How dare you?" Mom jumped up from the couch. "After everything we've done for you," she shouted. I laughed. "Everything you've done for me? Fine. Let's talk about what you've actually done with my money. Show me the receipts." "What receipts?" Dad finally spoke. "The medical bills I've been paying for. The house repairs you said you needed. Show me where my $320,000 went over the past year." The room went completely silent. Mom and Dad exchanged nervous glances. "We used it for necessary things," Mom stammered. "Necessary things," I repeated. "Like Sydney's shopping spree, her expensive restaurant visits, her designer clothes." I pulled out my phone and opened Sydney's Facebook page. Funny how someone living with our struggling parents can afford Gucci bags and weekly spa visits. Sydney's face turned red. "You've been stalking me." "No," I said calmly. "I've just been watching you show off my money all over social media." That was the day I walked away from them for good, and I never looked back.